Hello, my name is Herdrich. I'm here to talk to you today about my time of service in the United States Army. I served for 3 years in the United States Army Military Police Corps. I most often say that it was overall a good experience. That's what I tell people when they ask. I joined the military police unsure at the time what I wanted to do beyond a career in criminal justice, and even that was honestly quite sketchy. But the one thing that the U.S. Army provided was that opportunity to develop skills in a field that I thought I would want to go into. I was 19, 20 when I joined. In the military police corps, like every other job in the Army, you go through initially basic training, which is where you learn to do a soldier's job, a general soldier. You go through training with hand grenades, you go through a lot of marching, a lot of exercising, PT. I woke up late one morning and I got to formation for physical training, and one of my drill sergeants saw me sneaking in the back. So for the rest of that day, every time he saw me, I had to do 75 push-ups. So what he would do is he would step behind a pillar and then step back out and say, "Herdrich, I see you." So I'd have to do 75 push-ups. The emphasis in basic training is on getting you prepared to be a combat soldier. So it's a lot of physical training, it's training with the M16, your primary weapon. That's the orientation. And then you go into what's called AIT, or Advanced Individual Training, and that's where you learn about your specialty, which in my case was military police. So what you learn in military police, the Advanced Individual Training, that's where you learn basic law enforcement procedures in terms of both on post, when you're operating a gate, controlling access to the post, things like traffic control. Military police in combat have their primary mission is to protect sites that the U.S. military has. We set up traffic control points, we set up guard entry points. That's our primary focus in combat. If you're not in combat, and especially I was in what's called a garrison unit, so while I was in the military police for 2 out of the 3 years, I was in plain clothes, which is unusual in terms of what people think of in the military. If I had to go to a parade, if I had to go to a field training exercise, then I was in what are commonly called BDUs, or battle dress uniform, which is the common camouflage uniform you see. Parades, you're wearing your Class A uniform, but day to day, I was on military police intelligence, the drug suppression team, or DST, and in both of those instances, you are working as an investigator, and it mimics normal law enforcement. The drug suppression team is tasked with attempting to ensure that drugs are not being used on posts, or not being distributed or sold on posts. It's more of a police function than a military function, but it is on post. Military police investigations, you're investigating any type of crime that occurs on post. And that can include things like traffic accidents. We had traffic accident specialists, things of that nature. As I say, when it came to formations and normal military actions like parades, things of that nature, you dressed as a soldier would. But in the military police function, in those investigative units, you were acting like a normal investigator would. You were plain clothes. I also was on the special reactions team, which is essentially the same as SWAT in civilian police, and that function was very similar to SWAT in the sense that where I was stationed, we got called on twice by the local police to provide support for a situation, which they had. We, for the good or bad of it, that depends on your perspective, but we never actually had to engage with the subjects. There were people who were holed up in a hotel, keeping law enforcement at bay. They had a hostage. We stood by, but we didn't have to actually engage. That was the kind of job that I did. For basic training, you have drill sergeants whose job it is to yell at you. They are yelling at you. They are doing everything they can, essentially, to try to mimic the kind of stress that you might have if you're actually in combat. So there's a reason for it. There's a very good purpose to what they're doing. Nobody, and at least nobody I know, likes when it's 4 o'clock in the morning and somebody's got a wooden stick that they're banging on the lid of a garbage can to wake you up, because that's one of the things that they would do. But they would do that to make sure that you were ready. You would have surprise drills. You would have instances where the intention is, because you're talking about combat, to make sure that you are ready to face that stress, or at least they hope you will be. One of the things that happens when you're initially enlisting, and that's the thing that I should point out, I was enlisted, I was not drafted. It's an important distinction because we were not in an active conflict at the time when I served. But one of the questions they ask you when you sign up initially is they ask you, where would you like to go? They ask, what kind of a job do you want? That you sign a contract for. If you want to be a military police officer, then part of your contract is that is the training that you will receive. Then they ask you other questions, which are wishful thinking kind of questions, I guess. They ask you, what duty stations would you like to have? And the friends I have who have been in the service, we conjecture about the idea that the reason they ask you that question, for instance, I requested Okinawa, Japan, Korea, which is a military police are the only MOS, the only duty that goes over to Korea. There's no other part of the Army, no other job you have in the Army that will take you to Korea, only the military police. So I asked for Okinawa, I asked for Korea, I asked for Germany, I got Texas and New Mexico. And as I say, some of the people I know, we conjecture that the military does that purposefully, just to see how you react. Because you're not getting what you want, but, so I was spent my whole tour of duty stateside, which was not bad in and of itself, but it would have been nice to travel for free for a little bit of my life. My proudest moment in the military police corps, I would have to say there was a surveillance operation that myself and one other MP were involved with. We were on a small detachment, and we had detected activity over, it was in a large area of military property that was, the only thing that was going on that property was it's where some missile systems were tested. So other than when those testings occurred, there was not a lot happening. So we detected different activity. We double-checked with the people who were responsible for running radar and found out that there had been flights going over, not flights that anybody recorded. So we took that information and we spoke with U.S. Customs and wound up speaking with the Drug Enforcement Administration, and I'll never know what happened out of it, but I do know that if they initiated investigations into drug trafficking that might have been occurring over military property. What we found was a couple of downed, now we talk about drones. These were not exactly drones, but they were remote operated small planes that could carry something, a small package. And we found them down on property, military property, and it was, as I say, it was believed that what was happening is that those planes would carry a cargo that would get dropped in the middle of the desert, and somebody who was at the receiving end, so to speak, would be ready to pick it up. So that operation, as I say, I don't know whatever became of all of it, but myself, the other MP, and our sergeant at the time, we took that information and it became a joint operation with CID, the DEA, and Border Patrol, or Customs, excuse me. I think the biggest impact on my character from the service, well, there's a couple. You really learn about commitment. You learn that in order to get a task accomplished fully and completely the way you would like it, you have to personally follow through on what you have communicated you're going to do. And what comes directly hand in hand with that is teamwork. That for me was one of the biggest lessons. I come from a family of 5. I was a middle child, so we all know, strange things about middle children, but joking aside, I came from that family of 5, but being in the middle, my older sister, my older brother were off to college by the time I was, thinking seriously about where I was going to go in life. My younger 2 sisters were younger, so I wasn't talking to them about what my goals in life were. And that's the thing that the military teaches you, no matter what your MOS is, no matter what branch of service you're in, is the importance of being on a team. When I was on the Special Reactions team, and it was a funny part of training, because everybody failed the first time through. And what the exercise was clearing a building. And the reason everybody failed the first time through is because that was the intention. The intention was to teach you teamwork. And 99%, I shouldn't say everyone, but 90% of the people who go through that training the first time fail it because teamwork means the team is always first. So what they would do is they drop you down on the top of this building and there's supposed to be terrorists or some threat inside. And you learn while you're on the Special Reactions team how to communicate without, because you don't want to be speaking, you don't want to be shouting unless you've confronted the enemy. Once you've confronted them, they know you're there, you know they're there. Prior to that, you're using hand signals to do everything. And you go into that building and you want to use those hand signals. And if you're the person in front, the lead person, you're the point person, you see someone, you see something, you have to communicate that to the rest of your team. I was the rear guard, what's often called the shotgun person, because you're literally carrying a shotgun as opposed to everyone else who has either an M16 or, at the time when I was in, it was a .45 caliber. That's their primary duty weapon. And the shotgun person is turned around from the rest of the team, having to look back and forth, but primarily making sure that once, we've cleared a floor, when we're going down to the next floor, nobody's coming in behind us. So those, I would say, were the greatest impact in terms of character, understanding that I'm part of a team. That means I do my part and, I support the team. For me, what I would want to share with younger generations and, something to keep in mind is that service is important. Service is important for everyone and to everyone. And it doesn't necessarily mean just the military. It can be the Peace Corps, it can be AmeriCorps, it can be what you find it to be. But when I was in the service, and again, I was not 100% sure what I was going to do in the service or out of it. But the service helped me solidify that. And it's the thing about service and being part of that team and having that mission that you learn about yourself. You learn about where you have been prior to that. And I think, knowing what I do in terms of, the military, a benefit that comes with it is college, the GI Bill, money for college, things of that nature. Overall, my experience in the military was very good. And I think it's not necessarily something everybody should feel that they have to choose as their form of service, but I think it is a good idea for everyone to do a couple of years of service where they're putting themselves aside, so to speak, and really learning about themselves and where they want to go.